you're back again. So far, we've heard about how on Thursday, Jesus washed the disciples' feet before dinner. He did this to teach us how to be good leaders. Even the most important leader must be willing to serve others. After, Jesus sat down with his disciples and they shared supper together. During dinner, Jesus stood up and passed bread and wine around the table to share. He told the disciples that the bread was his body and that the wine was his blood. Every time we eat or drink, we should remember Jesus and what he did for us. After supper, the group of them went out to the garden to pray. While he was praying, Jesus asked God if it was possible to change the plan, if it was possible to relieve himself of the suffering and the pain that was coming. But Jesus remembered that it was God's plan that mattered most, and he finished his prayer by submitting to God's will and God's plan, even when he was really scared. Soon after he finished praying, Judas arrived and betrayed Jesus with a kiss, and the guards arrested him. Through Thursday night and all the way into the morning, Jesus was beaten and questioned. Finally, in the morning, Jesus was brought in front of a giant crowd of people and political leaders. The crowds shouted, and Jesus was sentenced to death. Today, we'll hear about what happened after that.
After Jesus was sentenced, things moved very quickly.
They had fashioned a cross out of wood and made Jesus carry it up the mountain.
But they soon realized that Jesus was too weak to carry it on his own.
Remember, even though Jesus is 100% God, he's also 100% human. And that part of him was really tired from being up all night, being beaten, and he was really afraid.
They made a man named Simon carry the cross for him up the hill.
They stumbled and climbed slowly up the hill until finally they reached the top, a spot called Golgatha.
Even the name sounds scary.
There at the top of the hill, they laid Jesus down on top of the cross and they crucified him.
If I was in the crowd, I don't think I could have watched.
I'm sure a lot of people had to look away.
When they hoisted the cross up in the air, Jesus was in the middle of two other people, two criminals, who were also crucified for their crimes.
The guards continued to make fun of Jesus, and they even put a sign up to tease him, and they made a crown out of thorn bushes and put it on his head.
They teased him and called him a king.
But Jesus is the King of Kings.
Yes, but they had no idea what they were doing.
It says in the book of Luke that at noon a darkness covered the whole earth. That must have been really scary for those who were there.
I'm sure they thought a bad storm was coming.
I think it was probably even darker than that.
At 3 o'clock, Jesus spoke to God. Father, into your hands, I give you my life. And then he died.
At the same time, the earth shook and the curtain in the temple tore in half. This was a big moment.
This part of the story is really important. We know that Jesus had to die because it was a part of God's great rescue plan for all of us.
Jesus was God's perfect son. This means he was without any sins. And when he died, he defeated death, the scariest thing in the world. Jesus defeated it by dying on the cross.
Now we don't have to be afraid of death.
When someone we love passes away, we feel sad, but we also know that one day we'll see them again.
That's because of what happened that day on the cross.
This part of the story is also important because it was the start of a new faith. When Jesus died, the curtain in the temple ripped in half. This was a special symbol to show that we no longer have to be separated from God.
But the people at the time didn't know this. The disciples didn't know this.
At this point in the story, they only know for sure that Jesus, their teacher, their leader, and their best friend, is dead.
Everyone who loved Jesus was very sad and probably very afraid.
They all went home and hid from what might happen next.
Little do they know, a big surprise is coming. But they'll have to wait for Sunday morning.